So, gentlemen, thanks for joining us today on Leadership Log, which is a podcast for the Air Force Lifecycle Management Center community on topics of interest to our workforce. And today, the topic of interest is simulators and training in a virtual environment. We've all been living in a virtual environment for the last couple of months now, and so we're getting more and more accustomed to it. But you guys have been on kind of the leading edge of this technology for years. So let's start with just kind of a broad overview of what is virtual training, what is the Air Force's interest in simulators, and what overall is our objective with that. And I'll throw that out to you, sir.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for the question. So I'm Lieutenant Colonel Rick Jaime. I'm the Material Leader, Branch Chief for the Operational Training Infrastructure Branch in the Simulators Division. And we basically manage and lead all cross-cutting programs that touch multiple simulators supporting the multiple match comms. So as far as why we do virtual training, so I mean, we have to understand what it is that virtual training is. It is really a digital representation of an aircraft where we integrate that aircraft into a synthetic representation of the threat space that is going to operate under, to include ground threats, air threats, blue and red weapons, any environmental effects as well. So we stitch them together, we integrate all those things together, and that creates an environment that should be dynamic, it should be realistic as to what the pilot should see in a real combat scenario, and that accounts for multi-domain as well as command and control aspects. And the overall objective for the Air Force, it's really all about improving readiness. So as it was highlighted by the OTI, the Operational Training Infrastructure 2035 Flight Plan, endorsed by our Chief of Staff, our virtual training capabilities are really to provide a relevant, integrated, realistic training environment that allows for a warfighter to be able to train in a number of mission-relevant employment schemes or scenarios to be able to get us to achieve that full spectrum readiness for the Air Force. So in a nutshell, that's the end state, is to improve readiness.
So to kind of summarize it a little bit, the real benefits are it enables training that otherwise might be dangerous to do. It saves wear and tear on aging airframes. There could be a fuel savings. Is that it makes training more realistic? Is that kind of the gist of it?
Yes, all those things. Virtual training really enhances the performance and capabilities of our operational crews to ensure they remain our Air Force is the best trained in the world. So it does not replace actual flying, but it enhances it. And it does so, like you said, in a much more efficient way. So a good example would be a pilot needs to beef up a particular component of their training, such as takeoff and landings, to be more proficient. So the pilot can jump into a simulator and get some repetitions and simulate a number of takeoffs and landings, where if he or she was going to fly in the jet, it would be a little more challenging because he has to wait to see if the jet's available and if it's fueled up, and the weather is going to impact the ability to train, and then he or she may be only able to practice only a few patterns for takeoffs and landings because of time and fuel limitations. So it's just like when we drive our cars. The more we drive our cars, the more we're going to wear and tear them. So this same thing with our airframes.
So it's been said that the virtual space is largely it's driven a lot by the gaming community. Certainly, a lot of games nowadays are in virtual environments. So who's really leading in this area? Is this one where the Department of Defense has got the lead, or is this more where private industry has the lead?
Yeah, I mean, as far as who has the lead from a report office or PEO perspective, there really isn't one assigned yet. Dr. Roper did definitely task us to explore what the gaming industry has to offer to see how they can help us solve some of our technical challenges with the virtual world. So we can leverage these gaming companies and what they can do as far as providing, what they do is they provide massive multiplayer, multi-platform distributed environments. But we really need to do a lot more investigation, right? We have to make sure, can the gaming industry really provide an operational training environment that can be integrated with our legacy simulators. Can their environments be scenario flexible and operate at a higher fidelity level? Can the gaming engines and architecture support the multi-level security facets of our training needs? And then can they simulate the high-entity simulations over a large environment covering thousands of miles with very low to little latency? So there are a number of challenges we need to investigate with them. So also a couple of data points. We know that AFWIC, the Air Force Warfighting Integrated Capabilities, sponsored a couple of prototypes of the no dice gaming tool, which is really to advance wargaming concept development. And so we've been invited, we're interested in participating in a couple of demos hosted by AFWorks that are going to happen in the fall to see where we can leverage those gaming the tools to see if they can be applied to a training scenario or a training use case. And then finally, as part of our innovation efforts in the simulator division, we're preparing for our pitch day 2020. We did have a successful pitch day last year for 2019, and that's done in December at our ITSEC Model and Simulation Conference in Orlando. And so one of the technology areas we are seeing with our pitch day efforts is for small businesses to come and pitch their gaming ideas and technologies under our CIVIC Phase 2 contract, so we can apply those innovative technologies to specific training use cases to see that, what can actually be done and how we can leverage all the investments that the gaming industry has done for our training.
Yeah, this seems like an area that would be ripe with opportunities for small businesses to engage with the Air Force to bring kind of their unique solutions to help us solve some of the problems that we have. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. I mean, we have to do a lot more investigation. I'm not sure they've seen, right, with like I said, multi-level security, cross-domain solutions, some of the really tough challenges we face. But there's definitely bandwidth there for us to explore what they can do to be able to bring multifaceted training environments from multiple locations.
Okay, so now that we've got a little bit better understanding of what we're trying to accomplish in the virtual training environment, let's talk a little bit about SCARS. So this is a contract that was recently awarded. Tell us a little bit about that and how is it going to help the Air Force train better?
Hi, this is Mike Burns. I'm with the SCARS program. I'd like to start off with just spelling out the acronym, and it stands for the Simulator Common Architecture Requirements and Standards. So SCARS is a half A3T sponsored sustainment initiative to incrementally establish an open architecture for Air Force simulators. It's all based on open interfaces, defined standards, and common applications. It is the Air Force's first major initiative to bring enterprise standardizations to training and simulation systems. Change will occur incrementally through the adoption of standards across the enterprise, which is going to drive us toward a more common open system architecture. And that's important for us because that gives us the ability to leverage similar solutions and drive down costs.
Right, so the Colonel was just mentioning, that one of the problems you have to do is see how it can, solutions can incorporate onto the legacy systems that we already have in place. So SCARS is looking to try and bridge that gap, is that correct?
Well, what we want to do is to incorporate standards across the enterprise. And with these standards, there are going to be spec changes that's going to happen to the simulators that's going to allow that ability to connect and to talk to each other. And that's going to help us with our training.
So I said this was a contract. Is it actually a contract or?
Yes, so it's multi pieces, but we did award the SCARS prime contract. It was awarded on June 26th. It's a $900 million ceiling IDIQ contract, and it was awarded to L3 Technologies. It is a 5-year base ordering period with 5 one-year options. And from that, we can issue individual task orders off the IDIQ. That's going to allow us the ability to add capability to what the contractor needs to perform.
Okay. And so can you give me some examples of like what would be some of the things that they would deliver under this?
Well, the first thing we want to do is for cybersecurity purposes. And so we're going to do that through remote scanning. So the very first elements is standing up the architecture, standing up a operating center, and where we can set up remote scanning to each of the simulators. So that's our first emphasis. That's our first increment. And that's how we're going to, we can individually add sites at different Air Force bases through these individual task orders.
So now, would this enable like elements where you would have maybe some virtual elements in a training mission paired with some physical, so like maybe an actual aircraft in the air in one location, but simulators in other locations? Is that the kind of environment we're looking to create, or?
Yeah, I'll take that question. This is Lieutenant Colonel Jaime again. So that, I think what you're getting at is more of the live virtual constructive initiative.
Okay.
It is also a line of effort in the Flight Plan 2035. So SCARS is really to standardize that connectivity from a live aircraft into the simulator. So as long as we have standards for all of our portals at each of the training ranges that allow common data coming from the live jet, so that it's displayed in the same way to all the simulators that are going to talk to the live jet. That's really what SCARS is trying to do, to make sure there's a standard set of data and inputs and output devices that can really make it easier to make sure we don't have any interoperability issues when we try to tie into a live work.
Right, I see. So yeah, standards, it's an important portion in the beginning, correct? I mean, we've got to make sure that everybody's operating on the same operating system.
Correct. Yeah, that's huge. Standards. I mean, so the reason SCARS is you know, is a fundamental reason is that it's there is because a lot of those platforms and training systems are funded, are procured individually over many decades. So they all came with their own solutions, their own technical baselines and configurations. So this initiative is really to standardize how we upgrade them, how we sustain them, so we can actually improve our ratings.
Okay. And then I guess that it would make it easier to incorporate kind of those unique one-off solutions if we've got a standard and those small companies are executing to that or working to that same standard, then it's easier to bring them into the fold, so to speak.
Correct.
Yeah.
This is Mike Burns, and yes, we're going to be able to. Thank you. So yeah, it's trifolded, where we can we're going to make incremental changes on the system simulators that are currently out there, and then if there's other changes that need to take place, we can incorporate that with new contracts. And then we're also going to be, when there's recapitalization that's going to happen, we can incorporate those standards for any new weapon system trainer simulators that we procure.
Okay. All right. Gentlemen, this has been a very interesting conversation. I really appreciate your time today. Is there anything that we've left out or anything that you want to add into? I know you mentioned that you've got an event coming up later this year. Anything that you would like to foot stomp?
Yeah, I would just say, Lieutenant Colonel Jaime, and I would just say, you know, we're very excited about SCARS. It is a transformational initiative. So we're looking forward to working with all of our vendors who are basically touching our training enterprise, make SCARS a successful reality. And then, as you mentioned, we do have our pitch day at the end of this year at ITSEC. We still don't know if it's going to be in person or virtual because of COVID-19, but we are going to have it. And so we look forward to you know, seeking out small businesses and seeking out the latest technologies to be able to inject those technologies to the training infrastructure to improve readiness.
Well, I would guess that if you would decide to take the event virtual, you guys would be exactly the people to know how to do that the best way.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
All right, gentlemen, thanks again for joining us today on Leadership Log. I appreciate your time very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.